Well, when all you have is a heating device in order to make your bugs disappear, your chances of getting a little movement is pretty good. So I kind of do this every time. So now to put that back on the stroke sander and run that down a little bit. There's a little gap, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. This has moved. And you can see the expansion in the resin that I laid in there. But that's the only place. So this stayed flat. I'm just going to knock this off with the 50 grit on the stroke sander. So I just did a 50 grit, and you can see it's flat, except for maybe just a tiny amount. And that I'll sand in by hand with the other one. So now I get the Rotex and just knock out that little spot and clean this up with some resin. And so now I'm just putting in a little coffee to, I probably put in too much. I don't know, maybe I didn't. I think it's right. Okay. An old guy at a home show told me about it. Old woodworker. I don't know who he is to thank him, but he helped me out a lot when he pointed me in this direction. I like using it because it's not just, doesn't just smell good when you're sanding it. There's a reason for it. And the reasons are kind of multifaceted. For instance, if I would have just laid epoxy resin on here, it just would have gone to the bottom of this trench. And I'd be filling it like 5 times. So with the coffee, I changed the viscosity of the resin. I'm changing it from thin resin to thick resin. And that just helps hold it up on the surface. I don't care what's going on down inside that crack. I'm not trying to fill the crack. It's just a surface crack. And so I'm just trying to blend it in. And then if you want to do some vertical work, this resin is real amenable to just staying put when you put enough coffee in it. Now, you got to grind that coffee down to espresso fine. You see, there's no chips in there. It's super fine. I use a Vitamix to grind it. I just do it until it looks right. You see, like this is just really doesn't want to drip very well. And it's according to what I'm doing. If I want to fill a big hole, I want it really thick. If I want it to stick something together, I need it kind of thin. But I might put a thick bunch on the bottom side as a dam, and then pour the liquid resin on top after the dam solidifies a little bit. And then I can fill the trench full. It's real handy to have this coffee. And I also use if I want something white, I use diatomaceous earth. That was stumbled on by accident. I just happened to have something that was powdered. So this is a handy little thing for cleaning up 220 and maybe 180 belts, but it doesn't do a very good job on 80 or 50. It's kind of like an eraser. It's called a belt saver, I think. And so you just kind of push it against the belt while it's running and put a little weight behind it and just move it back and forth. Try not to hit the sandpaper with your hand. That was 220 I went over this with. And there's still some marks, but I'll get those out with the sander, the hand sander. This is Rotex 150, 6-inch. It's seen a lot of work. In fact, it stopped working one time about 2 years ago, and I sent it back to Festool, and they repaired it for a couple $100 and sent it back to me, and it's worked beautiful ever since. It has had a few problems, like this little guy here, where the dust collector goes, has broken off, and I've CA glued it back on like 3 times. But as long as it keeps working, man, these things are a workhorse. The 6-inch one covers a lot of ground pretty fast. I'm going to hit this with a 180 to knock off any of these 50 grit marks that I used to knock the initial thickness down. And then I've used one 220 there, and so I still have some 50 grit marks I have to remove, but this will clean up everything. Okay, it's real important when sanding to have a plan. When I was in the military, in Air Force, they taught us to do a search, a grid search. That's just walk this way in a straight line, come back, walk this way, straight back, move over a little bit. And you do that, and then you do it the opposite way if you're searching for something in the ground. So this is kind of the same thing. You kind of do it in a grid pattern. Do a square foot, go straight above you, do another square foot, and come right beside you. Just keep doing that all the way across the piece. And when I do that, I move the sander in a kind of a figure eight in that spot. And I do that the first time on the Rotex mode for grinding. And what that'll do is it'll leave a significant swirl pattern with the 180. So that gives me ability to wipe out all the 50 grit and the 80 grit marks. And then I'll put it on regular sand, and it'll take off all of its swirl marks with the same pad. And so I'll get a nice 180 sand with Rotex without having to go down to an 80 grit to take those other marks off. Just because I flipped the switch, and now it's grinder. Flip the switch back, now it's vibrator. So it's one tool doing two jobs with half the sandpaper.